They sold a widow for being childless, but a rancher with a little girl pleaded, "Stay with us." The sun rose slowly over the small village of Marval, casting long golden rays over the dusty streets and thatched roofs. Birds chirped softly in the distance, but their cheerful sounds could not chase away the heavy feeling that lingered in one home. Inside a modest, worn-down house at the edge of the village, Amara, a young widow, sat quietly on a wooden stool. Her eyes were fixed on the cracked floor, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The house was quiet, too quiet, except for the occasional creak of the old wooden door swinging with the morning breeze. Amara had been married for only a few years when tragedy struck. Her husband, Rowan, had fallen ill suddenly and passed away, leaving her alone in a world that suddenly felt colder and harsher. At first, the villagers offered sympathy, but over time their kind words turned into whispers. "She has no children," they would murmur, shaking their heads. "What use is she now?" Being childless in Marvel was more than just unfortunate. It was seen as a failure, a sign that a woman had no purpose. Widows without children were treated differently, sometimes even cruelly, as if their worth could be measured by their ability to bear sons or daughters. Amara felt the weight of their judgment every day. She had been a loving wife, devoted and kind, but now, without a child to carry on her husband's name, she felt invisible. Her in-laws, who once treated her with mild respect, had grown cold and distant. They would speak to her only when necessary, their eyes filled with impatience and disdain. "You cannot stay here forever," her mother-in-law had said just yesterday. "Your time in this house is ended. We must think of our own family's future." The words had cut deeper than any insult she had ever heard. They didn't just suggest leaving, they demanded it. The villagers added to her anxiety. Rumors swirled that Amara would be sold to another family because she had no children to care for her. The thought made her stomach twist painfully. Sold. Just like a piece of property, like a cow or a cart. How could they treat a human being like that? How could they forget all the love and devotion she had shown? Amara tried to imagine a life beyond the village, a life where she could be free to choose her own path. But every thought was clouded by fear. She had nowhere to go, no relatives to turn to, and no wealth to offer as a bargaining tool. She was alone, except for her memories of Rohan, and even those brought both comfort and sorrow. She remembered the early days of their marriage, when Rohan would hold her hands and promise her that they would face the world together. "We will make a home filled with love," he had said, his eyes bright with hope. She could still feel the warmth of his smile, the softness of his voice, but now it was all gone. All she had left was the emptiness of this house and the looming threat of being cast aside. Amara's thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. She looked up, startled, and saw Lena, a young neighbor, peeking in cautiously.
Lena had been one of the few people in the village who treated Amara kindly, though even her warmth was limited by fear of angering the elders.
"Amara," Lena whispered, "are you ready?"
She knew what Lena meant. The elders had called a meeting to decide her fate, and today was the day they would finalize it.
She nodded silently, unable to speak. The thought of facing the elders, of hearing the words "sold" out loud, made her feel faint. She wanted to run, to disappear, to hide somewhere the world could not reach her, but there was nowhere to hide. As she stepped outside, the village seemed different somehow. The streets were the same dusty paths she had walked 1,000 times, the houses the same weathered walls, but the air felt heavier. Neighbors glanced at her with a mixture of curiosity and pity. Some avoided her gaze entirely. Whispers followed her wherever she went, a low hum of judgment and expectation. She arrived at the village square where a crowd had already gathered. The elders sat in a row on wooden benches, their faces stern and unforgiving. Amara felt her throat tighten. She knew that once she stepped forward, there would be no turning back. Her life, it seemed, was no longer her own. The eldest among the elders, a man named Rajan, cleared his throat. His voice carried across the square, sharp and commanding. "Amara," he said, "you have been a widow for more than a year. You have no children, and your place in this household is no longer justified. The village has decided that you must be placed with another family who can care for you and give you purpose." The words struck her like a cold wind. She wanted to protest, to shout that she was not an object, that she had feelings and dreams. But the voice in her heart was small, weak, and trembling. She only nodded, barely able to hold back tears. As she stood there, feeling the weight of the villagers' judgment, a wave of despair washed over her. She thought of the life she had known, the love she had shared, and the cruel way it had been dismissed. She felt small, insignificant, and invisible, like a shadow in a world that only valued children and inheritance. But even in that moment of despair, a small spark of hope remained. Deep down, Amara refused to believe that her life had no meaning. She clutched her hands together, silently promising herself that if she survived this ordeal, she would find a way to live, to matter, to love again. The elders began calling out families who might take her. Names were mentioned, offers discussed, and arrangements suggested. Amara felt herself shrinking under the gaze of the crowd. She wanted to disappear, to sink into the earth and never be seen again. She felt trapped, like a bird caught in a cage with no key. As the meeting continued, she noticed a few sympathetic faces in the crowd, people who looked at her not with judgment but with quiet sorrow. Their eyes gave her courage, a tiny reminder that she was not completely alone. She took a deep breath and held her head high, even as her heart quaked with fear. The day stretched on slowly. The sun climbed higher in the sky, beating down on the square, but Amara barely noticed. Her mind was full of questions. Where would she go? Who would care for her? Could she survive in a world that seemed so cruel and unfair? As evening approached, the elders paused their discussion. The villagers began to disperse, leaving Amara alone in the square with only the shadows of the tall trees for company. She sank onto a bench, her hands trembling, her eyes dry despite the tears that threatened to fall. She felt the full weight of her loneliness and the uncertainty of her future pressing down on her chest. But even in that moment, a faint sense of determination stirred within her. She knew that no matter what the elders decided, she would survive. She would find a way to live, to matter, and to be seen for who she truly was, not for the children she had not borne, but for the heart she carried inside her. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the village square. Amara stood slowly, brushing dust from her clothes. She would face whatever came next, whether it was with fear, courage, or both. She did not yet know what her future held, but she clung to a simple truth. She would not give up. She would not let the world define her worth. As she walked back toward her small house, the wind carried the soft sound of distant voices, the faint laughter of children playing in the fields. The sound made her heart ache with longing, but also with hope. Perhaps someday she too would know laughter again. Perhaps someday she would find a place where she belonged. For now, all she could do was survive, hold on to her dignity, and keep the small spark of hope alive in her heart. And deep down, she knew that her life, though uncertain, was not yet over. The morning sun rose over the rolling hills outside the village of Marvel, painting the fields with soft golden light. Far from the dusty streets and whispered judgments of the village, there was a large ranch owned by a kind man named Elias. Elias was a widower, a man who had known loss and loneliness, and he raised his young daughter Lily on his own. The ranch was alive with sounds of animals and the rhythm of work. Horses neighed in the stables, chickens clucked in the yard, and the wind rustled the tall grass like a gentle song. Elias loved the calm and the freedom of his land, but even surrounded by beauty, he felt a quiet emptiness. His wife had passed away many years ago, leaving him to care for Lily alone. Though he cherished his daughter more than anything, he often worried about her loneliness. She was bright, curious, and full of laughter, but Elias knew that growing up with only him as a parent could leave gaps in her heart. He wished for someone to share love with them, someone kind and gentle who could help both of them feel complete. One morning, while checking the perimeter of his property, Elias overheard travelers speaking in hushed tones. They spoke of the village of Marval and a young widow named Amara who had been abandoned and was to be sold because she had no children. Their words struck Elias like a sudden chill. How could people treat another human being like property, he thought, shaking his head. He felt anger and sorrow mixed together, but most of all a deep desire to help. Elias remembered Lily playing in the yard just the day before, laughing as she chased the chickens. He imagined Amara beside her, offering warmth and care, and a strange hope stirred in his heart. Perhaps Amara could help them both, not as a servant or an object, but as a human being who deserved respect, kindness, and a second chance. He spoke quietly to himself as he walked through the fields. I must go. I cannot let this happen to her. If I can offer her a home, I will. She deserves a chance, and so do we. The decision gave him a sense of purpose he had not felt in a long time. By midday, Elias had prepared a horse and a small cart. He packed supplies, food, blankets, and gifts for Lily, and set out toward Marvel. The journey was long, winding through narrow paths and hills, but his mind was focused on Amara. He thought about her loneliness, her fear, and the injustice she faced. Each step brought him closer to her, and with each step, he felt a mixture of hope and nervousness. Meanwhile, back in the village, Amara's days were growing more uncertain. She had returned to her small house after the elders' meeting, trying to carry herself with dignity, but the whispers never stopped. Children would glance at her curiously. Neighbors avoided her path, and even the marketplace felt cold and empty. She walked through life as if in a fog, unsure of what the next day might bring. One afternoon, while Amara sat quietly near the village well, a group of travelers passed through the square. One of them, a young man with kind eyes, paused when he saw her. He studied her face for a long moment, as if reading the story behind her tired eyes. Amara felt a mixture of fear and hope rise in her chest. She had grown so accustomed to being ignored or judged that it was strange to feel someone looking at her with genuine interest. The man approached her slowly. "Are you Amara?" he asked, softly. "I heard about your situation in the village." "My name is Elias. I have a home far from here, with room and care for someone like you. If you wish, you could come with me. You would not be alone, and you would be safe." Amara's heart leapt, but she hesitated. The words sounded like a dream. Could it be true? Could someone truly offer her kindness without expecting something in return? She studied his face and saw no hint of judgment or greed. There was only warmth, honesty, and a quiet strength. Yet the fear inside her was strong. How could she leave everything she had ever known, even if it was filled with sorrow and rejection? Elias seemed to understand her hesitation. He did not push, did not demand an answer. He only said, "I will wait. Take your time to decide. But know this, I promise you will be treated with respect, and you will find a home here." Then, with a gentle nod, he mounted his horse and began to prepare for the journey back to his ranch. That evening, Amara sat by the window, watching the sun set behind the hills. Her mind was full of questions, but for the first time in months, a small flicker of hope burned inside her. She remembered Rowan's words long ago, "We will make a home filled with love." She realized that love could take many forms, and perhaps this new life, uncertain as it seemed, was a chance to find love again. Meanwhile, Elias returned to his ranch, thinking about Amara and Lily. He imagined the little girl's eyes lighting up at the sight of a new companion, someone to teach her, to laugh with her, and to care for her. He thought of the quiet evenings by the fireplace, of conversations and stories shared under the stars, of a home filled with warmth and life. When morning came, Elias set out again, determined to reach the village before the elders finalized their decision. The journey seemed longer this time, but his determination never wavered. He carried not only supplies but also a sense of purpose that lifted his spirits. Every hill he crossed, every tree he passed, reminded him why he had undertaken this journey. By the time he arrived at Marvel, the village square was bustling with activity. Amara had been sitting quietly near the well, lost in thought, when Elias approached. He dismounted his horse and spoke gently. "Amara, I am here again as I promised. The choice is yours, but if you wish, I can take you to a place where you will be safe, where you will be respected, and where you can find a home." Amara looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of deception, but there was none. She saw only honesty and kindness. The fear in her chest still lingered, but it was now joined by courage and hope. She realized that she had the power to choose her own path, to step into a life that could offer her love and belonging. Finally, she nodded slowly. "I will come with you," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "I will trust you." Elias smiled gently and extended his hand. "You are not alone anymore," he said. Lily, who had been playing nearby under Elias's careful watch, ran forward when she saw Amara. At first she was shy and curious, but the warmth in Amara's smile and the kindness in her eyes made Lily feel safe. She reached out, and soon the two were holding hands, a quiet bond forming between them in the golden afternoon light. The journey to the ranch was long but filled with quiet conversations, laughter, and the soft rustling of the wind through the trees. Amara felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. For the first time in many months she felt a sense of belonging, a feeling that perhaps her life was not defined by what she had lost, but by the love she could still give and receive. When they arrived at the ranch, the sight took her breath away. Rolling fields stretched as far as the eye could see. Animals grazed peacefully, and the air smelled of earth and freedom. The house was large but welcoming, with a warm hearth and soft light spilling from the windows. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, a place where life felt possible again. Lily ran ahead, her laughter echoing across the yard. Amara watched her, feeling a mixture of awe and tenderness. She realized that this little girl, with her bright eyes and open heart, would teach her as much as she could teach Lily. Together they could build a life filled with trust, care, and love. Something she had feared was lost forever. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Elias, Amara, and Lily sat together by the fire. The warmth of the flames reflected in their eyes, and for the first time, Amara felt a flicker of peace. She had faced judgment, fear, and despair, but now she had found a chance to start anew. She realized that life could still be beautiful, that kindness and love could exist even after loss, and that sometimes hope arrived in the form of unexpected strangers with open hearts. Amara knew that challenges lay ahead, but for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to face them. With Elias and Lily by her side, she understood that her life could have meaning again, and that she could belong somewhere, even if it was far from the village she had once called home. Amara's heart pounded as she approached the ranch for the first time. The journey from Marvel had been long, but she'd barely noticed the miles. Her mind was full of wonder, curiosity, and a little fear. Everything around her was so different from the dusty streets of her village. The grass was green and soft underfoot. Trees stretched tall toward the sky, and the air smelled fresh and alive. She had never imagined such beauty in a single place.
Lily ran ahead of Elias, her laughter floating through the open fields.
Amara watched her, feeling a strange mix of joy and nervousness. The little girl had no reason to trust her yet, and Amara knew that she had to earn that trust gently. She smiled softly, a tiny flicker of hope glowing in her chest. Perhaps this new life could be more than just a safe place. It could be a home. Elias guided Amara toward the house, opening the door with a warm smile. "Welcome," he said simply. "This is your new home. Please, feel free to look around." The house was large, but it did not feel cold or distant. Light streamed through the windows, illuminating wooden floors and walls lined with simple decorations. A soft rug lay in the center of the living room, and the smell of fresh bread lingered in the air. Amara took a careful step inside, her senses drinking in every detail. Lily approached slowly, clutching her favorite doll. Her bright eyes studied Amara. Curiosity and caution mixed in her gaze. Who are you?" she asked softly, her voice almost a whisper. "I'm Amara," she replied gently, kneeling down to meet Lily at eye level. "I'm here to be your friend if you'll let me." Lily hesitated for a moment, then stepped closer. There was something kind and comforting in Amara's tone, something that made the little girl feel safe. She reached out her tiny hand, and Amara took it carefully, not wanting to startle her. In that simple touch, a quiet connection formed between them, fragile but real. Elias watched silently, smiling at the bond beginning to grow. He had hoped for this, but seeing it happen before his eyes was more beautiful than he imagined. "There's plenty of work to do around the ranch," he said, trying to break the tension. "But you can start small, Amara. Learn the animals, help with chores. Lily can show you how we do things." Amara nodded, grateful for the gentle guidance. She was eager to help, to feel useful, and to begin healing from the pain of her past. She realized that this new life was not just about survival. It was about learning, growing, and being part of something larger than herself.
Their first task together was feeding the animals.
Amara had always loved animals, but she had never cared for so many at once. Chickens pecked at the ground, curious about the new face. Horses nickered softly, their eyes bright and gentle. Amara felt a strange peace in the simple rhythm of work, her hands moving carefully as she scattered feed and checked water troughs. Lily followed her closely, giggling when a chicken tried to peck at her hand. "You're good with them?" Lily said, her voice bright with admiration. "My mama used to be good, too." Amara's heart ached at the mention of Lily's mother. She wanted to offer comfort, to tell the little girl that she would not replace her mother, but she could be someone who cared for her and loved her in a different way. "I'll do my best," she said softly. "I promise to take good care of you and the animals." The days that followed were filled with new experiences, small victories, and quiet challenges. Amara learned to milk the cows, to gather eggs, and to mend fences. She found herself laughing at Lily's jokes and stories, and slowly the walls around her heart began to crumble. The fear and sorrow she had carried from Marval were still there, but they were tempered now by the warmth of a family that accepted her. One afternoon, Elias invited Amara to help him in the fields. The sun was high, casting golden light across the rows of crops. They worked together, planting seeds and clearing weeds, their hands moving in rhythm with the land. Elias shared stories of his past, of his wife, and the life he had once known. Amara listened quietly, feeling a connection with him that went beyond words. She understood loss and loneliness, and in his voice she heard echoes of her own pain. "You've been through much, haven't you?" Elias said gently, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow. Amara nodded, looking down at her hands.
"Yes, but
"I think I'm ready to try again. To live, to care, to belong somewhere." Elias smiled, a mixture of pride and relief in his eyes. "You're stronger than you think, Amara. And here, you don't have to face life alone." Evenings at the ranch were a quiet comfort. They would gather in the living room by the fireplace, the warmth of the flames filling the room. Amara and Lily would sit together, sometimes reading, sometimes telling stories, sometimes just watching the fire dance. Elias would bring tea or bread, and the simple routine became a rhythm that grounded them all. One night, as the stars filled the sky, Lily climbed onto Amara's lap, her small arms wrapping around her. "I like having you here," she whispered. "I was scared at first, but I think you're nice." Amara held her gently, feeling a tear slip down her cheek. "I'm glad, Lily. I'm glad you let me be part of your life." The trust between them grew slowly, each day bringing a new moment of connection. Amara taught Lily small things, how to braid her hair, how to recognize different birds in the fields, and how to care for the animals with patience and love. In return, Lily taught Amara to see the world with fresh eyes, to laugh without fear, and to embrace joy even after sorrow. Elias observed this quietly, grateful for the life that was unfolding before him. He saw how Amara's presence brought a new light into their home, how her kindness and care softened the edges of their loneliness. The ranch, which had once been quiet and empty, was now filled with warmth, laughter, and hope. But even as happiness began to grow, Amara could not completely forget her past. There were nights when she would wake, haunted by memories of Marval, by the fear and rejection she had endured. She would sit quietly by the window, staring at the stars, and whisper promises to herself. She promised to be strong, to be kind, and to never let the world define her worth again. Elias noticed these moments and never pushed her to speak. He understood that healing took time and that trust was built slowly. Instead, he offered small gestures of support, a cup of tea, a warm blanket, a kind word. He allowed Amara to find her own rhythm, to take her place in their lives at her own pace. Weeks passed, and the ranch became a true home for Amara. She found joy in simple tasks, comfort in routine, and love in the bond forming with Lily and Elias. She learned that belonging was not about where you came from or what others expected of you. It was about the connections you built, the care you gave, and the courage to open your heart again. One bright morning, while walking through the fields with Lily, Amara felt a deep sense of peace. The sun warmed her face, the wind played through her hair, and the sounds of the ranch surrounded her. She realized that she was no longer the widow from Marvel, the woman defined by loss and fear. She was Amara, a person capable of love, kindness, and hope. She belonged here, in this place, with these people who had opened their hearts to her. Lily skipped ahead, laughing and calling her name. Amara smiled and ran to catch up, feeling the joy of the moment. Elias followed, his presence steady and comforting, a reminder that family was not always defined by blood, but by love, trust, and care. In that moment, Amara understood that life could be beautiful again, even after pain. She had faced fear, rejection, and sorrow, but she had also discovered courage, hope, and a new beginning. And for the first time in a long while, she felt that the future was something she could embrace, not something to fear. The ranch was more than a home. It was a sanctuary, a place where Amara could heal, grow, and find her place in the world. And as the sun set over the hills, painting the sky with shades of gold and pink, she knew that this was only the beginning of a life filled with love, laughter, and hope. Life on the ranch continued to unfold with a comforting rhythm, yet it was not without its small challenges. Amara was beginning to feel at home, but she knew that being part of a family was more than chores and routines. It was about trust, understanding, and learning to navigate emotions, both hers and those of the people she cared for. Each morning, Amara would rise with the sun. A soft glow filtered through the windows of her new room, illuminating the simple furnishings and the small belongings she had begun to call her own. She would dress quickly, quietly moving through the house so as not to wake Lily before her usual energy burst into the day. The little girl was always ready for adventure, racing through the kitchen and into the fields, her laughter echoing across the ranch like music. Amara learned quickly that life here was active and filled with responsibilities. There were chickens to feed, cows to milk, fences to repair, and gardens to tend. At first, she worried about being clumsy or slow, but Elias was patient, guiding her with gentle instructions and words of encouragement. "Take your time," he would say. "There is no rush. You are learning, and that is what matters." Lily loved to help too, though sometimes her small size and playful nature made the work harder. Amara found herself laughing at the little mistakes, at spilled buckets of water or chickens escaping into the garden. In these moments, the walls around her heart felt thinner, and the warmth of family began to grow stronger. But life on the ranch was not all easy or cheerful. There were days when Amara struggled with feelings she could not quite name. Memories of Marval haunted her, whispers of the villagers, the fear of being sold, the judgment she had endured for being childless. Sometimes she would catch herself staring into the distance, her hands frozen mid-task, lost in thoughts of a past she could not change. Elias noticed these moments, but he never pressed her. Instead, he would offer quiet support, a cup of tea, a warm blanket, or a hand on her shoulder. His presence was steady and reassuring, a reminder that she was no longer alone in facing life's hardships. Slowly, Amara learned that it was okay to have these feelings, that healing was a process, not a race. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept over the ranch. Dark clouds rolled in quickly, and heavy rain began to fall, drenching the fields and turning the paths to mud. Amara was in the barn with Lily, trying to shelter the animals from the downpour. The wind rattled the wooden walls, and the animals grew restless, adding to the chaos. Lily clung to Amara, her small body trembling with fear. "It's okay, Lily," Amara whispered, holding her close. "I'm here. We'll be safe." Elias arrived just in time, guiding them through the rain to the safety of the main house. He carried buckets of water and helped secure the barn, his calm presence steadying both women. Amara realized that safety and comfort could exist even in the midst of chaos. She felt gratitude for Elias, for his wisdom, and for the shelter this home offered, not just from storms, but from fear itself. As the days passed, Amara became more confident in her role on the ranch. She began taking initiative, noticing small tasks that needed attention and completing them without instruction. She repaired fences, tended the gardens, and even learned to ride one of the horses, a gentle mare named Daisy, whose patience mirrored that of her new family. Lily watched her with wide eyes, pride shining in her gaze.
"You are amazing, Amara," she said one morning, as they worked together in the garden.
"I never knew someone could be so good at so many things." Amara smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest that she had not known in months. "Thank you, Lily," she replied. "I'm learning just like you are. We help each other, don't we?" Evenings at the ranch had taken on a comforting rhythm. They would sit by the fireplace, sharing stories and meals, the soft glow of the fire casting shadows on the walls. Elias would talk about his past, his late wife, and the dreams he had once held. Amara listened quietly, understanding loss in a way only someone who had suffered could. She began to share her own stories, speaking of Rohan, the village, and the fears she had carried for so long. Lily loved these evenings, asking questions and often slipping her small hand into Amara's. The bond between them deepened with every shared story and quiet moment. Amara realized that love could take many forms, and that family was not only about birth or blood, it was about care, trust, and presence. As the ranch grew brighter with their daily routines, a new challenge emerged, not from outside forces, but from within Amara herself. She began to notice feelings developing for Elias, a deep respect and gratitude that sometimes mingled with affection. She quickly silenced these thoughts, reminding herself that her focus should be on Lily and her new life, not romantic feelings she could not yet define. Elias, too, noticed the growing closeness, but he kept his feelings in check, understanding that Amara was still healing. He valued her presence, her kindness, and her ability to bring warmth to their home. More than that, he recognized the strength it had taken for her to leave the village and trust him and Lily. In silence, he admired her courage, knowing that true bonds were built slowly and with care. One morning, while they were tending to the animals, Elias called Amara aside. "I want to thank you," he said gently, "for everything you've done here, for Lily, and for making this house a home again. I know it has not been easy, leaving your past behind." Amara felt tears prick at her eyes. "I didn't realize how much I needed this," she admitted softly. "Not just the work, but the kindness, the trust, the feeling that I belong somewhere again." "You do belong, Amara. You've made a difference in our lives. Lily is happier. I am happier, and I think you found a place where your heart can heal." Their conversation was interrupted by Lily, who ran toward them holding a small bundle of flowers she had picked in the garden. "Look what I found!" she exclaimed, her face glowing with pride. Amara and Elias smiled at each other, sharing a quiet understanding that family was being built in these simple, joyful moments. As weeks turned into months, Amara's confidence grew. She began to plan small projects for the ranch, like planting a new garden for vegetables and flowers, teaching Lily how to care for it, and even inviting neighbors from nearby farms to share in their harvest. Her past fears slowly melted away, replaced by purpose and a sense of belonging. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, Lily climbed into Amara's lap and leaned her head against her shoulder. "I love it here," she whispered. "I love having you with us." Amara held her tightly, feeling the full weight of the journey she had taken, from fear and rejection to love and acceptance. "I love it too, Lily," she replied. "We are a family now, and no one can take that away from us." Elias watched them from a short distance, his heart full. He understood that life was not perfect. Challenges would continue, and healing was a slow process. But he also knew that they had created something rare and beautiful. Amara's courage, kindness, and willingness to trust had transformed their lives, and in return, the ranch had become a sanctuary where all three of them could thrive. The nights grew calm and quiet, filled with the gentle hum of nature. Amara would sit by the window before sleep, reflecting on the path that had brought her here. She remembered the fear in Marval, the whispers, and the looming threat of being sold. And yet, here she was, safe, valued, and loved. She realized that sometimes life could be unfair and cruel, but it could also surprise you with new beginnings when you least expected them. The ranch was no longer just a place to work and live. It had become a symbol of hope. Amara knew that she had faced her fears, embraced trust, and opened her heart to a life she had once thought impossible. She was no longer defined by her past, but by the choices she had made, the love she had given, and the family she had found. As the sun set behind the hills, casting a golden glow across the fields, Amara, Elias, and Lily stood together outside the house. The warmth of the day lingered, the wind whispered softly, and the animals settled into the calm of evening. Amara felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that this was only the beginning of a life filled with love, trust, and hope. A life where she could finally be herself and be cherished for who she truly was. The seasons changed gently on the ranch, and with them, life began to feel even more complete for Amara, Elias, and Lily. Spring brought soft rains and fresh green growth across the fields. Summer brought long days of sunlight and laughter, and autumn painted the hills in brilliant shades of gold and red. Each day felt alive, full of purpose and warmth, as Amara grew more confident in her place within this new family. Amara's mornings began with the crowing of roosters, just as they had for months now, but there was no fear in her steps. She moved through the house with quiet grace, preparing breakfast for Lily and Elias, tending the garden, and checking on the animals. What had once felt like endless work now felt like a series of small joys, each task a way to contribute, to belong, and to see the tangible results of her care. Lily often ran to meet her in the kitchen, her bright eyes shining with excitement.
"Look, Amara!"
"The carrots grew bigger than last week," she would exclaim, holding up a small bunch with pride. Amara laughed, taking the vegetables and brushing them clean. "You and the garden are doing a wonderful job, Lily," she said. "I'm proud of you." Elias watched these moments from the doorway, a quiet smile on his face. He could see how the bond between the two had grown, how trust and love had replaced the shyness and fear of the first days. Amara had not only become a caregiver for Lily, but also a source of stability, kindness, and guidance. Her presence had transformed the ranch into a home, and it had transformed them all. But life was not without its challenges. One afternoon, a harsh wind blew across the fields, carrying dust and leaves in a swirling dance. A fence that Amara and Elias had repaired the week before had been damaged, and the animals began to wander toward the orchard. Amara's heart leapt in concern, but she quickly took charge. "Lily, come help me round up the goats," she called, her voice calm but firm. The little girl ran to her side, her small hands clutching the rope that Amara handed her. Together they moved carefully through the fields, guiding the animals back to safety. Elias joined them, and within an hour everything was secure again. Amara felt a rush of pride. She realized that the ranch was not just a place of comfort. It was a place where she could act, protect, and contribute. It was a place where her skills mattered, and her heart found purpose. For the first time in her life, she felt strong in ways she had never imagined. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Elias suggested they all take a walk together. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange, and the air smelled faintly of earth and flowers. Amara, Lily, and Elias walked hand in hand along the winding paths of the ranch, the soft crunch of grass beneath their feet. Lily skipped ahead, her laughter ringing like a bell. "Amara, come see this," she shouted, pointing to a small family of deer grazing near the edge of the field. Amara knelt beside her, feeling a sense of wonder and peace she had not experienced in years. "This is beautiful," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "I never thought I'd see anything like this." "Life can surprise us," he said quietly. "Even after loss, even after fear, there can still be beauty, love, and hope." Amara nodded, feeling the truth of his words in her heart. She realized that the fear and rejection she had faced in Marval had not broken her. It had prepared her to recognize and cherish the love and kindness she had found here. As the days passed, the bond between Amara and Elias grew stronger, though quietly and gently. They shared tasks, laughter, and stories, each moment building trust and respect. Amara found herself looking forward to their conversations, the way his eyes softened when he spoke, and the quiet strength in his presence. She knew that her heart was healing, that the emptiness she had felt for so long was being replaced with hope and connection. Lily, for her part, flourished in ways that made Amara's heart swell. The little girl's curiosity, creativity, and laughter filled the ranch with light. Amara found herself teaching Lily not just practical skills but also lessons about kindness, patience, and empathy. Together they discovered the joy of planting seeds, tending to animals, and exploring the hills and forests around the ranch. One crisp autumn morning, Amara awoke to the sound of wind rustling through the trees. She looked out the window and saw the hills glowing with gold, orange, and red. She stepped outside, breathing deeply, and felt a sense of contentment she had never thought possible. Elias joined her, handing her a cup of warm tea. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he asked softly. Amara smiled, her eyes bright. "It is," she said. "And it feels like home, like I finally belong somewhere." Elias nodded, his gaze steady and kind. "You do belong, Amara. More than you know. You've brought warmth, love, and strength to this place, and to us." That evening, the three of them sat by the fireplace, sharing stories and laughter. Lily leaned against Amara, her small head resting on her shoulder. Amara looked at Elias, who returned her gaze with quiet understanding. In that moment, everything felt right. They were a family, not defined by blood or past sorrows, but by trust, care, and shared love. Weeks later, as winter approached, Amara found herself reflecting on her journey. She remembered the fear in Marval, the whispers, and the threat of being sold. She remembered the heavy weight of loneliness and the days she had thought she would never find happiness again. And now, looking at her life, she realized how far she had come. She had found a home, a purpose, and a family. She had discovered that love could come in many forms, and that life could surprise even the most wounded hearts. Most importantly, she had learned to trust again, not just others, but herself. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Elias, Lily, and Amara stood together outside the house, watching the sky turn shades of purple and gold. Lily held Amara's hand tightly, her face glowing with joy. Elias stood beside them, his presence steady and comforting. "Thank you," Amara whispered, her voice soft but full of meaning. "For everything. For trusting me. For giving me a chance. For letting me be part of your life." Elias smiled warmly. "No, thank you, Amara. You've brought life back to this place, and to us. We are stronger, happier, and complete because of you." Lily hugged them both, laughing with pure delight. "We're a family," she exclaimed. Amara felt tears welling in her eyes, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she said, smiling through her tears. "We are a family, and nothing can change that." As night fell, the ranch settled into calm. The animals rested peacefully, the wind whispered through the trees, and the stars shone brightly in the clear sky. Inside the house, Amara, Elias, and Lily sat together, sharing warmth and quiet comfort. The journey that had begun with fear, rejection, and sorrow had led them here, to love, belonging, and hope. Amara realized that life was not about avoiding pain, but about embracing the moments of beauty, trust, and connection when they arrived. She knew that challenges might still come, but with Elias and Lily by her side, she felt ready to face anything. She had found a place where she mattered, where she was loved, and where her heart could finally rest. And in that quiet, peaceful moment, Amara understood something she had never truly believed before, that even after the darkest times, life could offer new beginnings, and love could be found in the most unexpected places. She was no longer the widow of Marval, no longer the woman judged for being childless. She was Amara, a cherished part of a family, a person who had endured, grown, and discovered that happiness was possible, even after sorrow. The ranch was more than a home. It was a promise, a sanctuary, and a place of endless possibilities. And as the fire crackled softly in the hearth, Amara, Elias, and Lily sat together, their hearts full, their spirits light, and their lives intertwined in a bond that would endure. Together, they faced the future with courage, love, and hope, knowing that no matter what came, they had each other, and that was enough.